How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to UAP Tuesday. That's right, UAP Tuesday here each and every week on the channel. We talk about everything going on in the world in the UAP phenomenon, the latest stories, what's happening, what are people talking about, and there's a lot going on each and every week. It's even why I started my daily news channel, which is just called Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. And we already just hit 25,000 subscribers on that channel because, as I just said, there's tons of news. When we started this show, it's like, oh, will there be enough to cover on one week, one show a week? And now there's constant stories that we're going back and forth every day, just trying to figure out which one should we cover. So this show on Tuesdays, we take all of the stories that have been happening and we talk about it. We have a discussion about it, and then we want to hear from you guys when you guys weigh in. So if you're brand new to the channel and you've never been here before, please make sure you subscribe here. We are we're getting close to 150,000. We're hoping we're going to get there. And yeah, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are found. As I mentioned, with all the things that are going on in the news, there's a right now a disclosure fund that's going on, UAP Disclosure Fund, and is David Grusch working with this particular fund. There's a lot of names that you'll recognize when you hear the names. When we go through them, you can probably just guess a few. Like, let me guess, Chris Mellon. Yeah, you're right. Let me guess, Garry Nolan. You got it. Let me guess, Lue Elizondo. You hit it. So we'll talk about that and what it will do. And as I mentioned, question is David Grusch also working with them? We haven't done it in a little bit. There's some footage. There's always footage of potential UFOs, UAPs, and there's one now in Georgia that has been making the rounds, and it's pretty clear. So we'll give our thoughts on that. Um, you know, Stephen Greer, say what you want. Some people think he's got too wild claims to take serious. Others think that no people aren't taking him serious enough. Well, he was in an interview and he talked about basically, you look at what Lue Elizondo and Garry Nolan had said recently with potential getting threats, and people always say these people who are talking about this and who've worked in the program that something happens to them, it could be nefarious, maybe not, who knows. Well, Stephen Greer says if anything happens to me, I got a little backup, something that I guarantee you that goes public real fast, so ain't nothing gonna happen to me. In another interview that's been making the rounds again, I think it was a little while ago, is that Luna was out there talking about how she was Men in Blacked and talks a little bit more about the interdimensional stuff. And this was an older interview, but it's been kind of hitting the waves lately. And the question, I guess, is why? And then we also potentially will kind of dive a little deeper. And we've talked about how there's other countries that are making the push. I did a story the other day about the UK and how they're looking to potentially be one of the first to with disclosure. And now Japan is putting together something also, a kind of a UAP task force, if you will, similar to what we've been talking about here. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I don't even know we'll get to all of it, but that's a lot. And joining me here today is going to be Pavel. If you know Pavel, if you're watching Down to Earth, he joins me there a lot. He helps me out with a lot of the stories on the Down to Earth channel. So he'll be here today. So as I said, hit that button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it, man. It's me and it's Pavel. It's UAP Tuesday. Here we go. So it's myself and Pavel. What's up, Pavel? How are you?
Hello, Kristian. How are you?
Good, man. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming to the show.
Yeah, it was great, man. It was amazing.
It was fun. Yeah, Pavel came to the stand-up comedy show that we did, and it's at the Comedy Store. It was a lot of fun. And for people, by the way, I put it in the link to the description. If you want to, I'll be in New York doing a show on June 21st with my friend Dan Merle. It's not going to be UAP stuff. It's going to be us talking about the movie season and if there's a way for the 2024 box office to catch back up from kind of the dismal year it's had thus far. So the link's in the description. If you want to come by and say hello, grab yourself a ticket, come on over if you're going to be in the New York City area. And that's it. So, but that's not what we're talking about here today, Pavel. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. Here's the first one, and this disclosure fund. I want to talk about that. Here it is. Okay, so the UAP Disclosure Fund has launched a new organization with leadership consisting of Lue Elizondo, Garry Nolan, Karl Nell, Chris Mellon, and Matt Ford. The UAP Disclosure Fund is a nonpartisan political nonprofit that advocates for greater government transparency regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena. We work to support new UAP legislation, provide legal representation for whistleblowers, promote scientific research, and rare public awareness in an effort to better address the UAP issue. There is the crew themselves. And look, and what's interesting here, I mean, Lue Elizondo, Garry Nolan, Karl Nell, Christopher Mellon, those are the ones that you knew right away would be part of that crew. And then Pavel talked to us a little bit here about got us a little more familiar with Kirk McConnell, Juan Fung, and then Leslie Duckworth, and of course Matt Ford. We know, and he's got his show, the Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford, that we see tons and tons of clips. I actually thought he did a really good piece the other day regarding the stuff going down with Tim Gallaudet. So what do you think about this? What does this mean, if anything, or is this just another organization?
Let's just talk about their purpose, right? Because I don't know if you noticed, but over the last 48 hours, a new Twitter whistleblower came forward. And I think this is exactly what they're trying to prevent. Even if these whistleblowers that came on Twitter are saying the truth, it is less credible if they do it like they did it here, or they go through an organization such as the UAP Disclosure Fund, which is what they've been trying to do with the whole topic in general, right? But I'm guessing that this fund, if they do it correctly, it is going to help bring more whistleblowers who are right now very hesitant to come forward after what's happened over the last 8 months.
Sure.
So
well,
on paper, that's it.
Yeah. Well, was that what you sent me last night with some of those whistleblowers? I don't. There's so many different. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and this is one of the things why why I think what you just makes a lot of sense, because you sent me like, look at this Twitter space. There's a ton of the big names that are there, and I'm like, and I turned it on. I was in my kitchen for a second. I turned it on, and I heard somebody talking. It's kind of disorganized the way that the Twitter spaces is. It's like you have to really look into who's speaking now, and you got to pay attention to the mic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's that person speak. It's just like disorganized. It's like an old school kind of internet thing, and I'm looking at it going, wait, who's this? And I look, and by the time I go, oh, it's that person, and then I've lost what they're saying. And the one thing I did pick up, and you can probably tell me who it was, because you're definitely more with keeping in tune the names and all that. But there was somebody that we were asking about the about disclosure, what they wish they could have more of, and what would be one of the big things to help it. And this particular person said that the funding is the big thing. Like, and
that was Richard Dolan.
That wasn't Dolan. No, it wasn't Dolan. When I heard it, I don't think it was. I would have known that. I know that name
because Dolan talked about that, though, about exactly what you're saying. He talked about
maybe
that.
It was Dolan, but okay. But when he was talking about the fact that, like, back in the day, there was a certain number inside of the budget of what they used to have, and now look, to give you hear it now, it's about $2 million that they have with funding for UAP and all that. But he said that's nothing. He said, because you need between 20 and 50 million, because you need protection for the whistleblowers. You need protection for this. It's expensive to do this, legal costs, all these things. And it made so much sense listening to it. But to just go back on the point of the Twitter spaces, it was like, I'm like, I can't just, like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Listen to this. I'm listening to this one thing. It's kind of jumbled audio. It's not good audio. And I don't know why anybody would choose to go there to release information. Maybe it's just an easier way to do it, but I think I don't know. I think there's better ways to get your information out there.
I was talking about this to someone earlier, dude, because he thinks, the person I was talking to, that Sands, for example, he thinks Sands is the real deal, but he thinks that he came forward on Twitter because he identified that the people who were going to release the information were not going to release it as he hoped they would. And that's the reason he decided to go his way. But I think that hopefully this fund can help prevent that kind of dynamic of distrust, that I think that's the goal, essentially. I think that's the
Yeah,
word.
I think so, and I just wonder how they're gonna what they're gonna do overall with this funding, how they're gonna do it, because like as I mentioned, and I wasn't being sarcastic at all. I was just be it was more so of like you can guess who the names are that are going to be involved because they're the big voices and they're the ones that are going to kind of make things happen. But it is one of these things of like, okay, there's this name, this name, this name. You know that these people are going to be involved. And then I thought it was interesting that, you know, of course, that I didn't realize how, I guess, locked in that Matt Ford is to all this also, right?
Yeah, he was at
And
Seoul actually.
yeah, what did he speak at Seoul?
No, he was one of the journalists. Like Ross Coulthard was too.
Okay,
They didn't
so
speak, but they
that's what
were there.
I'm interested in though too, because I think that if he's part of this and he's part of the board, right? It's like what I would, and it's I don't even know what I'm about to say because it's like I have in my head because I'm so used to like the if you're in the movie space and you have somebody who works for the studio, right? And they're like, okay, well, we have let's say somebody's doing a movie podcast, but then they start working for Warner Brothers. They can't give completely accurate um, reviews or reactions to the Warner Brothers stuff because they're involved in it. Now, the question I guess would be with Matt Ford is, and it's not the same thing. I know it's not, but because it's probably because he's so passionate in the subject and he gets the interviews that he does, and he knows that they probably know how much he's looking towards disclosure that they invited him to be part of it. I would assume that's the reason why. But there is that thing that's going to be there of like, okay, well, when he's on the show, it's more going to be it's like their official podcast now. You know what I mean? Which is not a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's just but like
With
he's
Matt
part of
Ford,
this.
though, I think that there is something that we need to explain because he's talked about it many times on his show. He's an experiencer too. Like he's talked about his experiences multiple times, and even his family was affected by the experiences he went through.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a lot into it because Dr. Garry Nolan is also an experiencer, and I guess that they have managed to trust each other over the years. But also there are multiple factors because también also Matt Ford is a political journalist and he has a lot of connections in politics. That's how another reason why he gets so many interviews with Congress people and
Right.
academia and all that stuff. So that would be the reason I think they decided to go with him as a
Sure.
strategist.
I think it makes all the sense in the world. I'm just saying that, you know, you got to be, especially with some of the people that are out there that are just looking to automatically discredit somebody. Of course, he's going to be this and that because he's on the board and he's doing this. But like he's very passionate about it. And as I said when I mentioned it beforehand, I thought that the way that he handled that thing with Tim Gallaudet the other day was very well said. And I think that yeah, that people's children should be uh, completely not involved in these things no matter what,
Yeah.
if he's like if the side excuses of why you brought them up and that it's just dirty, and I thought
Yeah.
Matt Ford did a very good job of how he did it, how he brought it up, but anyway, so this doesn't go away from the story doesn't we don't stop talking about this because there's another story connected to this with David Grusch, and let me bring that up. As you just mentioned there, one of the board members there, Yuan Feng of the UAP Disclosure Fund, explained how their new organization plans to assist future UFO whistleblowers. And he also answers if they're working with David Grusch. So here is the clip here, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Here we go.
Is there specific policies regarding whistleblowers that you're hoping to enact to ensure more? And also, do you guys already have some, like obviously you don't have to name them or anything, that you already are representing that you kind of plan on rolling out? Or is this just kind of more setting up for the future? And is Grush in any way affiliated or working with you guys?
Great questions. When it comes to specific policies with whistleblowers, I can speak to the fact that and I'm not an attorney and an expert in the mechanics of laws that would protect whistleblowers, but what's been explained to me is that right now the whistleblower protections that are in place are not sufficient because they are very retroactive in nature. We have right now, whistleblower can come forward and bring information to Congress. Suddenly, the program they've worked in, their bosses, they all know what happened. And then, legally, they're not supposed to have reprisals against them, but in reality, that can happen sometimes. And nothing happens until there's been some reprisal, and then they file a complaint with the inspector general, and then the inspector general does an investigation to see if their complaint is valid. So it's retroactive. So, what we need are proactive protections where they know before they're going to come forward and basically end their careers and put themselves potentially at risk. And if they were to come public, they would be under all the scrutiny. We need to have policies in place for protections so that they know that they're protected before they come forward. And that would be things like making sure that they would be put on paid leave, making sure that they have, proper legal protections in place. And one of the things that we want to do is basically be there to provide legal support in the form of representation, in the form of public relations support and media relations support for anybody that might go public in the future. Because, these are people who have been working behind closed doors in programs that are super top secret. And if they come public, they're not used to having reporters calling them and, the world seeing who they are. So, we want to be able to provide that kind of support as well. So this hopefully will provide a situation where they feel more comfortable coming forward. And yeah, in terms of your question of David Grusch, he's part of obviously an important part of the whole story that's happened over the last year. I mean, we're basically right on the year anniversary since he did his interview with Ross Coulthard and News Nation, and the debrief story came out. And so I think it's very possible that we may be working with him more directly in the near future. We're still looking into that. As is publicly known now, he potentially is looking at going to work directly in Congress as an advisor. So, whether he would, how much and what kind of role he might have with us in the future remains to be seen. But yeah, we're, very close and connected with him.
All right. So you hear that. I mean, and there's a lot to that, obviously. And one of those is exactly what we were talking about, how we need to have more connection and more protection to the whistleblowers. And that instruction or that explanation rather of all of that made a lot of sense. But then when you get to the Grusch side of it, it's good to see where that confirmation of, well, where is he? Where's he been? He's been potentially working here at we heard this, we've reported on this, that he was going to be working somewhere in the government. And it looks like this is more of a confirmation that that's going to happen. I think that you said it the other day in Down to Earth, which I don't think this was a coincidence that Karl Nell was the one who took his place. I don't think it was coincidence overall, that it definitely wasn't scheduling. They probably just said, look, as you are taking a more and more serious role and you're going to be kind of like our inside guy, you need to concentrate on that. And it seems like that's going to, as this gathers more, it gets more steam, and it looks like he's going to really have a lot more to do there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and he's also going to be working hand in hand with many of the Congress people that are doing this effort, and they need that kind of help from a person like him who is really in the know of what's going on. So yeah, it makes sense.
Well, it's also the question of whether or not he's going to be involved in helping with the hearings, right? Like if the hearings are there and he's working more, and you get a guy, if you get a guy like that in there working with all these people, that's really got to make the men in black, if you will, start to sweat, right? Because he was such a left field throw from everybody you talk to, whether it was Sheehan or when we talk to Steve Bassett, there's everyone that says that Schumer and Rounds, they were already planning to do all this stuff, but then Grusch came out of nowhere and just flipped all this stuff on their head and just escalated everything. And now to have him, because all these people have tried to discredit him and do these things, but if he's actually working in the government and working with them as they're trying to get more protection for whistleblowers and showing, I mean, if you're a potential whistleblower And you're like, well, how do I know I'm going to be protected? Well, look at Grusch. Look at Grusch. Grusch not only is protected and taken seriously, and he's now working with us here to
Yeah.
make this work. So, you know what I mean? So, like, maybe that's probably a way of encouragement also.
Also, they need to keep in mind, these whistleblowers, that there's a good side of the government that is trying to help them,
Right.
and they're not going to leave them just stranding behind like that. I don't think it's happened with Grusch. Quite the contrary. Many of us thinks he's a hero, and he believes what he's saying to be true. Whether it's whoever told him believes it or not, it's another question. But I think that this new system, more organized, more well put together, should be more than enough for the potential new 2 or 3 whistleblowers. I was talking to someone today who is very good friends with everybody at the top doing this. He has he has been doing research for at least a decade on this, and I asked him, I was like, dude, you gotta tell me, like, at least give me a breadcrumb or something. Do you know if something is happening or not? He's like, it's gonna be an interesting summer. And I was like, what do you mean, dude? Do you think there's gonna be more hearings or something? He's like, there are definitely gonna be more hearings, hopefully before the election. And I was like, okay.
That will be, I mean, it does seem it goes through these kind of waves, man, because it does seem that in January, everybody was hyped up. There's new things coming, all this. And the Arrow report comes out. It looks like there's this big, huge punch in the stomach, and like, up Arrow. It looked like Arrow did exactly what they were wanted to do. But over the last like 3 weeks, it does seem like there's like all of these things coming out more to like plant some stuff into the ground and go, no,
Yeah.
watch this, watch what we do now. Look at
When
this,
this
some of this.
person was talking to me about this, he
Yeah.
was like, and this is gonna continue, like, oh, matter of fact. And I'm like, what's gonna continue? He's like, there's no way of going back now. These guys put up a system that has a plan B, C, D, E, you name
Yeah.
it. It's like there's no way people are gonna forget about this, and it's not. It's a different era, and also we need a great deal. We have a great deal of gratification to have for the internet, man, because that changed things. It's
Yes.
not the
Oh,
same.
absolutely. Yeah, it's not as easy for them to bury as the way they did before, because you can like one of our stories today is Luna, right? In this interview that she did, I think a couple months ago or whatever it might be, but it started picking back up over the course of the last like couple of days. And that's what the internet does. It brings in, and just as people start talking about like these certain points and they get out there. I remember that when we covered that Florida to JFK UFO sighting, right? And it was just like us and like a couple other people who covered it. But then I think like some, whether it was News Nation or whoever else picked it up about 2 months later, and then everybody was talking about it even
Went
more.
viral. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what the internet does, and it can, and just like that, more people can keep talking about it, and you can't keep it quiet. I mean, look at this, the Vegas one that
Keeps
you talked
going.
about today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other story, whatever you want to believe about it, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's more to just your point of that the internet is just going to keep this going, especially with all the different outlets that are covering it on the internet. And
Yeah.
as you guys know, until I'm blue in the face, I'll say that it'll hit a new wave when the television media starts picking it up, like the mainstream television media. That's when it's really going to start to change. But all right, we have a lot to talk about with other stories. And as I told you guys, if you have any comments on the David Grusch stuff, if you have any comments on, the other things that we talked about so far, put your comments in there and let us know what you think. All right, before we move on to our next story, I wanted to thank you guys. As I mentioned to you each and every week, we're so thankful to you when we do this show Down to Earth. You guys are always thanking us for doing it. We thank you guys for watching. We thank you guys for being part of the conversation. And as I mentioned, week in, week out, every day, that it helps us stay on the air. When you get yourself something from one of our wonderful sponsors, it really does. It helps us go, and that's how we fund ourselves, is through sponsors, it's through YouTube revenue. That's how it works. That's how we're able to keep going. So when you guys get something for yourself, you're breathing life into the show. So let me tell you about two of our sponsors right now, and that is both The Perfect Gene and Tushy. Here you go. The other day, my wife walked in. She said, "Whoa, where those jeans come from? Those are amazing. Those are nice." I said, "That's right. It's The Perfect Gene, baby. Love The Perfect Gene. Perfect Gene makes great looking, perfect fitting jeans, and they're stretchy and they're nice, and they hug your assets in the perfect place. They really do. It's got special denim fabric. It's very soft. It's really great. I've been wearing these and it's super comfortable and they look good. And that's what I needed. And I got it. Trust us when we say these really are the perfect jeans. Because once you try them, you're never going to go back. For a limited time only, my listeners are going to get 15% off their first order plus free shipping. But you got to go to theperfectgene.nyc or Google The Perfect Gene and use the code DTE for 15% off. I love it. I put them on and I was curious at first because they were like, stretchy jeans, does those work? And they do. They feel super comfortable. They look good. And I like wearing them. Super stretchy and great. I felt good, man. Felt good wearing them and I can move around in them and I like that. They fit great. Make sure you go to theperfectgene.nyc and use that code DTE, 15% off. Get it. So many comments lately about everybody that's buying the Tushies. And I see why you're buying them. I love them. You love them. Chris Carr loves them. Everybody loves the Tushies. I'm so excited to get you guys to get a Tushy that I almost thought about doing this from the bathroom. But then I was like, no, I want you to get it. It's terrible. That's a terrible thing for me to do. But I want to do it because I want to show you how much I love the Tushies. Check this out alone. Look at this. Just open up the toilet lid. You spray the water right in your tush. It's wonderful. Look at that. That's how it works. It's that easy. You put it on the toilet, you open it up, you spray the water on your butt. It's lovely. It's going to change the way that you think about cleaning up after a spicy dump in a coffee shop or a porta potty during a music festival. You're going to want to take Tushy with you everywhere, and thankfully you can. Because the Tushy Travel, it's collapsible, it's durable, and discreet portable bidet that gives you the most confident clean on the go. I keep telling people about these things. Everybody are getting the Tushies now, and everyone's like, oh, man, can I use your code? Can I use your code? Of course you can. It's the best. I got one. I've got two in my house right now, and it is so wonderful. We feel classy in this house. It's got a 3-stream nozzle for a total clean. It's got a new air mesh bag for discreet travel, faster dry time. It comes in 5 new colors. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and 12-month warranty. So stop wiping until you bleed. Join the 2 million butts who have already made the switch to Tushy. For a limited time only, our listeners get 10% off your entire order, but you got to use that code BIGTHING. 10% off Hello Tushy, HELLTUSHY.com with the promo code BIGTHING. All right. Thank you to our friends over at The Perfect Gene. Thank you to Tushy. Really appreciate them being on board. So thank you guys once again. If you're able to, get yourself something good. All right, here we go. Let's get into the next topic here. All right, Pavel, I mentioned earlier as we were talking about that Luna story, this is a longer clip, so I'm going to play the clip itself, but it is relevant and as it just popped back up, we'll talk about why we think it resurfaced, why people are talking about it now, and the stuff that was discussed in it. But here's the actual interview itself.
Tell me about you've heard about the UAPs, UFOs.
Yeah.
So okay, tell us about that.
So I got Men in Blacked. I know a lot of people are going to be like, that's crazy. But ultimately what happened is, being a member of oversight, we follow up with whistleblowers and we also can conduct our own investigation. So myself, Representative Burchett from Tennessee, and Representative Gates were on a small codel to the Panhandle because a whistleblower came forward from Eglin Air Force Base pilots to Representative Gates' office saying that the Air Force was essentially covering up UAP activity and we needed to look into it. So we coordinated the meeting. Pentagon tried to initially cancel the first one. We got it back on the books. We show up there and we get in, and the base commander tried to basically tell us that we didn't have authorized clearance to look into and speak to some of the witnesses, of which you don't tell Congress that we don't have the authorized clearance, especially members of House Armed Services, Oversight, and Judiciary. So I kind of had it out with the base commander, which is kind of funny because this guy really thought that he had it going on. And he actually, in the middle of our meeting, he took off on leave, which never happens with a delegation going to military base. But then also too, we had pretty sure people from the agency that were there as well. And so you really don't find that. I've worked at Hurlburt Field. I've worked in the military for a number of years. And so why would a intelligence agency need to be there on a meeting for whistleblowers? So that happened. I can tell you, based on my investigations, not in a classified setting, that I absolutely believe that there is things that are advanced technologies not of human origin. And then we conducted the interview with David Grusch. As you saw, it was one of the most widely attended congressional hearings in U.S. history. The information that was brought forward was particularly alarming because you're hearing about people that have potentially been murdered and covering up this information. And it was very interesting. So I advise everyone to watch it.
Yeah. Was it so based off what, and have you received classified information or just what they said?
No, yeah, we've, but I can't talk about
Yeah, of
that.
course
Yeah.
you can't talk about it. So what did you, before you came to Congress, did you think aliens were real?
So I wouldn't call them aliens. I really like what Grusch calls them. He says that they're interdimensional beings, and he's very
So
specific
what
about
does
that.
that mean?
I think it means that they're not necessarily a biological entity from another planet per se.
Interesting.
What I will say is, I share a Christian perspective
Mhm.
on many things. And what's been interesting about this is the amount of stigma that existed previously to this cycle. But we have such a bipartisan push for transparency on this topic that they can't necessarily hide it. It has been interesting to see the levels of things that come up. Oh, there's no authorized clearance. You don't have the read-in authority for this, that, and the other. Well, if Congress is writing the bills to fund these programs, yet we don't have authorized access and oversight into it, then that's not necessarily something that happens in a free country, right? So we continue to push. But I mean, it's been very interesting to see some of the stuff that's come up.
Was it before you learned it? Did you think it was going to be completely different than what you learned? Was it pretty
No,
on par?
I had some suspicions leading up into it. When I was stationed at Portland Air Guard Unit a number of years ago, I remember there was a incident that occurred, and the pilots kind of came back, and I asked one of them what he thought it was, and he couldn't really talk about it. He didn't want to, because the stigma that the military has is that you're crazy, right? But we're seeing that with especially technology that we have, even your iPhone, for example, you can record things, and it's not necessarily going to be classified. So I kind of knew about it. I knew that that was a thing within the military and that people were kind of worried about talking about it. But I think now, especially with transparency, we hope that more people come forward. The people that have come forward are credible. We've done the background checks on them. They're not, tin hat wearing kooks.
Right.
But, historically, there's a lot there that's to uncover. And I suggest that everyone look into it on their own.
I mean, you don't really take the gravity of this whole thing. Like, it, when you look at that and you look at what she's saying there, and she has mentioned a few times, and I think there was I don't know if it was after, it might have been Matt Laszlo that talked to her. She's mentioned the interdimensional beings thing, but she straight up pretty much tells this guy here in this podcast, yeah, I don't think that it's aliens. I think that it's interdimensional beings, is what she's saying. And
Yeah.
she also says that she has information that's classified that she can't talk about. She's also, that speaking to Matt Laszlo, he had reported that she was told at one point, or her and Gates at least, and perhaps Burchett, I don't know, saw pictures of bodies or whatever it was. That was never confirmed or denied, but it was still a report. She is convinced, man. She is convinced, and she is one of the lead fighters on this thing, and she's one of the ones that's pushing for. She pushed for a lot of the field hearings, but hearing her talk about this, like, this is one of the, and as she talked about Grush's hearing and how widely, how watched it and popular it was, and why wouldn't it be? If especially if all this information eventually comes out, this is going to be like this, like all of these things that are happening over this past year, this is going to be like a major point in history that people are going to be talking about if all these particular claims and the way she's talking about um are real. But let me ask you this, Pavel. Let me break down some of the stuff that she says in this interview, but also,
Yeah.
why is this being resurfaced now?
First of all, what we saw 2 months ago was a smaller clip from this video.
Right.
That's why it resurfaced, because there are parts of the video that we hadn't seen. The part where she says that she believes that these are non-human technologies. That's new. We hadn't heard her say that on that clip. She said it before in other spaces, but not on this clip. Yeah, so with Luna, it's interesting, man. She sounds like she's a no BS kind of woman, and she wants to get into fights with these people that are the secret keepers, especially the Air Force, because they're the ones that have been like the most guilty or the guilty party mentioned in this whole topic.
Right.
And what I find it very interesting, I don't know if you agree with this, because we're also going to talk, if we have time, we're going to talk about Tucker and what he said. But I
Yeah.
think that there's this tendency from the people who are more like Republican and more Christian and believers to think that this is some sort of like interdimensional stuff, or like, with entities from other realms and stuff like that. And the people who are more like scientific about it are more leaning towards the ET hypothesis, or maybe future humans or stuff that is more science fictiony, I don't know if you
Yeah.
see
See,
the same.
well, I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. I think there's merit to that, but I also think there's also side of it. Like for me, I'll just straight up, I don't consider myself very religious these days. I would say I'm more agnostic
Yeah.
and I think that for me, I am a big kind of more so science fiction and those types. And if I'm going to start thinking about it, but I buy more into the interdimensional stuff because I think that makes more sense with the capabilities of technology than I do light year travel and all that stuff. And it to me, if there's a way to, with all this stuff with T. Townsend Brown and the anti-gravity stuff and the way that to me seems with physics and quantum physics and all that, how that could potentially work seems more doable than how you figured out how to do light travel. So that to me has nothing to do with religion, but I'm not this not it's not to say that your points aren't valid, that maybe there are a lot more that do look at it that way. Because when people start throwing around angels and demons and all that, it loses me. It's not to say that again that there's not merit to it. Maybe that back in, who knows, if you want to go really tinfoil hat with it, you can say like back when people were writing about these things that maybe they saw some of these things, and to them that's what angels and demons were. I don't freaking know. I don't even know when it comes down to that. But like I start to tune out a little bit, whether right or wrong. But if it's a belief that people are having, that they think that it is all interconnected, then what the hell do I know about it? I can't definitively say yes or no, it is angels. It's nothing. I'm just saying personally, I'm like, I don't know. And maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. Maybe it's like the taboo thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, nobody
Um,
can really. Um, it's impossible to know, to be honest with you, until we die. But I would look at the many scriptures that have come forward since the old times, and then authors, and then, and try to study that as a way to, in an anthropological sense, just to understand what people in the past thought of these phenomena, and how they managed to try to explain them in many cases. Whether they're true or not at the end, I think it's better to be more informed on these explanations and even the Bible and stuff, instead of just like trying to be nuts and bolts about it and strictly science. I don't know if you think the same way.
yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't, as you said, there's no clear answer to it, right? And I just need to jump back to what we were originally talking about with where
Luna.
you were saying that with Luna, when I think that it is good though that you've got people within Congress that are pushing back, and the idea when this person says, "Well, you guys don't have clearance," so what are you talking about? I mean, we don't have clearance. Of course, we
Yeah.
have clearance, and it is that old school mentality of like, no, like we have, you guys are just suits.
The classic,
You
you
guys,
don't need to know, or you don't
you
have
don't
a
need
need
to
to
know,
know.
because that's the way it's been run for the last 70 or 80 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there is this. I'm on two minds of it, because I am in that pessimistic mind of how many times over they're able to pull this trick of, nah, nothing to see here, go about your day, and then and then nothing really happens. But it does seem like this isn't going away. at all. But I also ask myself, is it not going away now because I cover it every day? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if I was covering it back in, if I decided to do what I'm doing now, back in 2018 or 2017, after I read the New York Times article, and I was doing this and paying attention to everything going on over the course of the last, 7 years, would I feel like there's so much progression happening because I've been covering it for 7 years. But like there are some people who have no idea any of this is going on because nobody covers it outside the internet.
Yeah, and there's this phenomenon going on also between uh many content creators and journalists who started covering this back then, and so in 2017, that have gone disillusioned completely because
Mhm.
it hasn't really happened, that thing, and they've been very impatient about it. But I would just tell them to look at Dr. Jack Valet or even Dr. Garry Nolan, who have done this for decades literally, and they know it's a marathon, not a race. It's
Yep.
not easy. No, it's not just like, let's disclose, come on, nothing's gonna happen, dude. There's a lot of stuff that's gonna happen
There's a
after
lot of stuff
after
that
that.
needs to happen. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. And as we've said, this was an older interview. So I don't even know what her spirits have been like lately, but we know that one of the people she works with very close is Tim Burchett. And every time you see Tim Burchett, he seems like he's more and more not skeptical of the actual phenomenon itself. He's pretty the exact opposite. He's just more skeptical that anything is going to happen because of the consistent blockage that him and his crew and everybody else, and no matter what they try to do, it looks like those people in power that have been keeping a secret for so long are continuing to do so. Well, we had this thing from Robert Garcia over the last couple of days and the amendments to the Schumer-Rounds bill, and Burchett kind of spoke out about it a little bit. And this is what he said. All right, this tweet from UAP James. This is part of the Tim Burchett op-ed, which one of the major quotes here that we're going to cover here is, I don't expect the UAP Transparency Act to pass. My efforts to push for increased transparency around UAPs have been stonewalled by the IC and other members of Congress. However, we need to try. We need to get everyone on record. Now, you can, in the National Review, you can read the full op-ed by Tim Burchett, and I'll put that in the link in the description there. When you hear this, it's exactly the way that we set this thing up. And that is that Tim Burchett, although he is not thrilled and doesn't believe that it's going to happen, thinks that they'll get stonewalled again, has a very pessimistic kind of point of view that they're going to be able to get past this wall that's been there for so long. He follows it by saying, doesn't matter though, because we got to try. It's not like it's not one of these people that are like, well, there's no reason to fight because we can't win. It's like, no, I don't think we can win, but we got to keep fighting. And I'd rather take that. I'd rather him go and go, like, I would love to hear him say, no, this is going to pass. We have this, and he's got this, but he's just been beat up so much that he's just, over it, but he's not done fighting.
Yeah, the key is in the way he sounds like there's a sense of urgency, because I believe that he, Luna, Garcia, I don't know if the others, but at least those three for sure already saw some stuff that made them continue on this path, And I think Burchett is more desperate than the rest because probably he got a little more information than the rest of them. He's the one who has the most contact with the people involved in the investigation of this, out of all the Congress people. So I can totally understand where he's coming from. And yeah, he's not going to give up. They're not.
Yeah, you would. I mean, it doesn't seem like he is. I mean, he wrote this full op-ed and where he's talking about how these files need to be disclosed, and he's part of it, but he just doesn't have. He's very similar to what I say in this show is that and it's that quote from, I got to get that quote on my wall from George Knapp of
Yeah.
they're better at this, they're better at their jobs than we are at ours. And I say it all the time, and I think it's relevant to this particular story, and but it doesn't mean that we should stop talking about it. It doesn't mean that Burchett should stop fighting about it. It just means that they have an oiled machine in what they've been doing for the last 75, 80 years and how to
Yep.
keep certain things quiet. So I just wonder where it's going to go and whether or not it's actually going to spark public hearings, if it's going to have other whistleblowers come out. It's interesting that the person that you're talking to says that there's definitely going to be hearings. I wonder about it. I mean, it's been about a year since the hearings with David Grusch, which is crazy. It went so fast. I don't know. I don't know what happens, but I guess I ask you guys, man, what do you think? What do you think about Burchett? You think Burchett's going to bounce back and get back into that fighting spirit? Not that he lost his fight, but more so of the like, we're knocking the walls down because we made things happen. They know things are happening now. And what if? And I think that's the other thing to ask Pavel too, is because his thing is that he doesn't believe that this amendment from what Garcia put in there and all that it's not going to get passed. I said it to you when we covered it the other day. I don't think
about the eminent domain part, especially.
I don't think it's going to get passed either.
Yeah.
I think that maybe another tweak of it. But and I remember when Bassett was telling me about it, when we had him in studio, we were interviewing him about it, and I was like, "What's the difference? Why?" And he thinks that the way that Schumer is presenting it, that Schumer is going to be able to get it passed. I just don't understand how they're going to get it passed. I really don't. Like, maybe from the support they're going to have. I mean, but like, why is anybody who blocked it last time not going to block it this time?
Even if they don't pass it, I think that this UAP fund will help in some aspects to get more information from firsthand people in a
Yeah.
more secure fashion, and it's aimed at giving them more trust in these efforts, So even if it doesn't pass, which I don't think it will, honestly, at least not completely, the other efforts are also worthy of taking a look at and just keep an eye out on them, because it's like when I was talking to this guy, it's like, dude, there's just too much going on right now, and it is so tense right now that if one side doesn't cave into the other, someone's just gonna fire a shot and it's gonna be hell. And when he said that, I was like, "What do you mean fire a shot?" it was
Yeah.
it was strange the
What
way
did
he phrased it.
what did you ask him that thing?
Yeah, he wouldn't go there. He implied that NHIs would have something to do with a forceful release of the information, and that's what I understood anyway. How he phrased it and how he said it,
Yeah.
it was really strange.
It's, I mean, yeah, I mean, all this stuff is. Oh, I guess we'll follow up with that with the Stephen Greer story. So let's talk about this. All right, Skyfire News posted this clip of Stephen Greer. Let's play this clip and then we'll talk about it.
Have what's called a dead man trigger, which means something happens to me. There's information I'm holding that will hit the internet, and it'd be the end of this group. I'm actually better off alive than dead for them, because being alive, they can just marginalize me, defame me, call me names, blacklist me from media. How do you figure we have a free market economy if the most important technologies and scientific discoveries of the last 100 years have been kept off the market ruthlessly? Some inventor invents some really cool energy generation device, and they're offered, here's $20 million by a corporate entity. The corporation buys it, puts it on a shelf, they've gotten rights to it, and it's never released. But that happens all the time with these technologies. You'll see all the different strategies that have been used over the last 100 years to hoover up, like a vacuum cleaner, all these science and technologies. Given that level of corruption, how can anyone claim that we have a truly free market economy if we're all slaves to oil?
I think what the interesting thing there is more so of the idea that he says he has all these things that could bury this group in a second if anything happened to him. And what goes back to what you were talking about before with the science fiction movie aspect of all of this. I mean, I don't know. I never really know what to make of a lot of the stuff with Greer. I'm not sure. And does he have information that is, because you could always, because he's talked about stuff out there in general that he's just been very open with, but as he would say, and as everyone else would say, there's no concrete proof to it. It's just things that he said. But the way that he's making this sound is that he's got concrete proof that would say there's no doubt. All right, so Stephen Greer is around 68 years old. So he's still, let's say he's got another 20, 30 years left in the tank, right? What happens if he dies of natural causes? Is there something that says, hey, when I go out, put this out there? You know what I mean? Or is it like, nah, they didn't do anything to me, so I'm not going to release it. It's like, how does that work?
Because at this point, I think have you heard him talk about how many people around him have died under mysterious circumstances?
No.
He's told this in multiple interviews. He has a vendetta against this alleged group, and
Yes.
I think that what he's going to, if he dies on of natural causes, I think there might be another scenario in which he also releases a lot of information. And it's funny that he said that recently because Ross Coulthard said the same thing at SCU. You know Tom from Estimate of the Situation? I interviewed him for my channel. The dude who makes the comic books about the phenomenon.
Sure.
He released a quote that says, "If anything happens to me, everything I know will be published by people from all around the world." That's what Coulthard said to him just last
Okay.
weekend. So I don't know why they're talking about similar things, but I do know that both of them do have a lot of information and have been talking to people from the intelligence community and from these programs. Greer has for sure. I know that for a fact. But there are many other claims that he has that are very sensational, you know, and that's where
Exactly.
he loses a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and that's why you there's one. It's the same thing that Ross Coulthard always gets about it. Ross Coulthard knows where this big, huge UFO is, but he can't say
Yeah.
anything. And people
Yeah.
always say, well, if you know and you can prove it, why don't you say something and put this whole thing to sleep? And there's reasons why he can't. In the same way that, like, I want to say to Stephen Greer, well, if you have all this stuff, release it now. What do you know? What it? I mean, if they're not gonna come after you, now, then why don't you release it now? But I guess that's the whole point is if he's alive, they could come after him because maybe it's classified stuff. I don't know.
He did release a lot of documents like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, he
He
did.
released
Okay.
like a
Well,
link,
what were on those?
a lot of them. There are a lot of videos that are really difficult to believe they're true, and a lot of meetings, exchanges, stuff similar to the Wilson Davis memo. And yeah, there's people going through them right now, but there's this problem, right, with people like Greer, like Linda, like Jaime Maussan, who have been smeared or have been involved in stuff that make people have a pause and maybe reconsider trusting them. You know, it's happening with a lot of the oldest researchers, and I think that's a stigma that will be really hard to get out of for all three of them. Just to give you examples, there are multiple cases, but and yeah, it's gonna be hard for people to, because for example, if you hear this, like Greer just released all of these documents, and what's your first reaction to them? You gonna go in there and look at them,
Right.
or immediately, or are you gonna pause and just go like, well, maybe I'll look at them later based on
Mhm.
all this past he has, you know? What would your
Yeah,
reaction be?
mine. I mean, with when it comes to Greer, yeah, probably the latter, where it's like, yeah, all right, there's a lot of this stuff that I mean, because the way that I feel about him in general is I don't, and I've made this a point to myself, and I mentioned this whether it comes to the Peru stuff, the Miami stuff, the Vegas stuff, I will not definitively say that's not true. I can't. I'm not. I don't. And in the same way that, like, every time when they talk about the MH370 the other day, someone said to me, "Stop talking about that because the Corridor crew said it's not true." The Corridor crew are really great VFX guys. They don't have all the information. They don't, because that drives me crazy. It's like until I definitively hear, no, I made that. I have this. I'm not going to tell you that they're not right, but I'm going to tell you that just because they say that right away, it's those types of things. So like when I hear, and I won't say definitively Miami didn't happen the way it did. I won't say those things. I can have my doubts, right? In the
Yeah,
same way that when Stephen Greer has certain things, I have my doubts. But if it comes out down the line that, like, look, some of the stuff that this guy has said and claimed and down the line, these types of things have happened. I don't want to be the one with the egg on my face going, Hey, you said definitively he was full of crap. Well, look at this. And I was like, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't, because I think that's the problem with you this when you do this and you're so like, definitely not. Definitely is. You got to be careful unless you definitely have proof, or you definitely have proof that it doesn't.
Yeah. That's a healthy stance to take for sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
anyway, well, I ask you guys this. Stephen Greer, you know, he's got this potential information. You think that he's going to release this stuff? Do you think that this is all bark, no bite, or do you think like no, watch out for what this guy has to say because there's some stuff coming? All right, we only have I think like one or two more stories left, but let's go to this Georgia footage and see what this is all about. Okay, again, Skyfire News posting this clip, and here it is, June 3rd.
The color starlight camera I'm using is a 4K camera. These are some close-up videos I got of the smaller UFO probes. I think there were 3 of them flying around me yesterday evening. A lot of the cameras are on a tower so they can see the whole area. I really want to talk to scientists or anyone high up in the government that is trying to figure out what is going on with all the UFOs and UAPs all over the place, and want to get the information out to the public. I'm looking for scientists that are studying the UFOs that would be interested in helping me show this to the world.
This is continued footage of it. Now that little flash there, as you see it, and it's kind of going back and forth.
It's
And
so
it's
cool,
moving.
man.
It is, but like I mean, as you see that thing kind of moving around, I mean this is like the clearest footage that I think we've seen.
Yeah, that and
Yes.
the plane in Colombia. You remember that one
I think so.
from like last
But
year? Those two are the
yeah,
best I've seen, man.
it's a pretty
This
good
is
one. All right,
amazing.
it's really good. This is my if you're like, okay, you can only theorize and you can only say what you think it is. I think this is the stuff, to me, this is the stuff that the government has. This is the type of technology that our government has that very well could have been built from NHI technology or whatever it might be. But this is that type of stuff, whether it's, you know, you look at the bringing up Ashton Forbes again, the type of stuff that he talks about that the government could potentially have, the stuff that Jesse Michaels has talked about, those types of things, the type of technology that they've been working on. That to me is what that potentially could be. Because when you look at that, someone's going to go, well, that's kind of like a little drone. That looks more like that than the standard, you know, UFOs that people have been seeing for years. But I don't know where you stand on it.
Yeah, it could be even if it's not NHI, it could be a technology that they discovered a while ago and they've been
Working on it.
experimenting with it for a long time. This ties into the Townsend Brown story too, because
Yeah.
if it's that type of technology right now, imagine how advanced they become since then, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
So
so erratic, like it goes from
yeah,
one way to another, like
a little
really
flash.
weird.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like
that flash
flash.
was strange too. Yeah.
It flashed like 2 or 3 times. So I don't know. I would say that this is definitely kind of a different type of tech than anything else. Not to say who knows the origin of where it came from.
Yep.
It just goes to show you though how important it is to find out if these public hearings happen. With the amount of times that Christopher Mellon has publicly talked about it, Karl Nell has publicly talked about it, all these people have publicly talked about the reverse engineering. I feel like at the public hearing, the next one, whenever that is, if it's this month, next month, or 2 years from now, it is going to be all about reverse engineering. That's the whole damn thing. It's going to be about bringing in people who worked in the program, people of exactly what they were working on, talking about in depth of what they've touched, what they worked with, what they worked on. That is the deal breaker, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And we're gonna have, I think, at least one or two more whistleblowers like Grusch, but who work directly on the program. And
Yeah.
that's I feel the same way. I think that's gonna happen for sure. And I think that there's an interest for it happening before the elections also.
Maybe. I mean, it would be. I mean, I don't know. It's as we talked about it on Down to Earth the other day. Whoever the president is of any place in the world that is part of that disclosure, and whoever the president may be, that if put it out there that NHI definitely has happened. There's interdimensional, all that things, and all that comes out. Whatever government does it, whoever the public leader is, that leader is going to be remembered for the rest of history. That's it.
Yeah.
So if if I'm Trump, and I think that I'm gonna win, I'm waiting, and then I'm disclosing in January of 2025. If I'm Biden, I'm doing it yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're going up against the guy that just disclosed alien life. How do you beat that?
Yeah.
So I don't. So maybe that's what Schumer and Rounds, or Schumer anyway, is trying to do. To be, maybe that's what he was trying to do at the end of it, trying to get that information out there. Because how do you beat the president that said, "Yeah, this is this there's life out there, and this is what it is." Nobody's gonna care about the little smaller things.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's why there's probably just so much more to it than just that. But anyway,
There's also
speaking of,
the involvement of other countries, which you're gonna
that's just about to
transition
get
to.
into here too. So
Yeah.
so let's talk about that. Let's talk about other countries, and how about this report? This is from News Nation. Japanese lawmakers are forming a task force to investigate UFOs. Lawmakers group will investigate the UAPs. Parliament members say information should be shared. Government spokesperson says it recognizes national security implications. So, Japan's fascination with the UAP has reached the halls of government thanks to a new group that will make the investigation of UFO incidents a higher priority than it has been. The UAP Clarification League for Security Oriented National Security is chaired by two members of parliament who say they have seen UFOs, also known as UAPs. The group's mission is to press the government to track and investigate UFO data and share its information with the U.S. It calls the possibility of the phenomenon a major potential threat to national security. This goes back to what we were just discussing, and that is, this is very similar to what we were talking about last year for this country, that the involvement of what David Grusch essentially was doing. So this seems what the Japanese government is doing also. And is this something, though, Pavel, that is this, as this topic heats up more, the governments want to get more involved with it because it's not as taboo, or this was the current lead up of what they had, what they were working with, and as you had people who were essentially experiencers who were like, no, we got to get to the truth here.
Yeah, I think that especially Japan, given their traditions and how serious they take on any matter, I think they're probably doing this in a very planned and structured fashion. Which I'm thinking that this announcement just came, but they've been planning this for a while, and this is how I think uh, contributions between countries on the UAP topic should go. uh, you announce, you make a structured plan, and you agree to share information. The problem is, does the US also share information with Japan in this example?
Right.
That's the main question, because
Yeah.
historically they haven't. And I don't know.
That's a question. That's another one we don't necessarily know, where it's like there's also this theory that all these separate governments, which is essentially what they are, that have this information of UAPs, there's the separate government inside the US, there's a separate government inside of Japan, all these separate entities that are dealing with this stuff. Are they in cahoots with one another? Have they made an agreement? Is that why there hasn't been this disclosure around countries? And is it the kind of the wild cards within, like these people that are wanting to do this in Japan, the Lunas, Burchetts, Moskowitzes, Schumers in our government? Are those the wild cards that are changing things now? Who knows? But it's all interesting, Pavel. It's all interesting.
I think that in Mexico specifically, because I'm Mexican, uh, I've sensed and I had identified that many of the English speakers who are investigating the topic, even if they're academia or scientists or everything like that, they are reluctant to share information about the UAP topic with Mexican researchers.
Mhm.
And we know there's a very specific reason for that. Um, I think that's unfortunate, to be honest with you, because, for example, Japan doesn't have that same issue Mexico has in terms of Mexican disclosure movement. The Japanese are very straightforward with what they share and what they do. In terms of this, I read the article and read the what they're gonna be doing, and I think it is very straightforward. They're not like trying to speak between the lines. And with Mexico, especially with the government right now, it is really chaos. This is a country that is ruled by the narco cartels. That's the reality. And that is something that will need to change in order to get more like participation with the US, especially, because it's really difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and it's no matter what, there are blockades from each and every government that are trying to do this, it seems like. But the Japanese coming up with this group that US has come up with and to do more research on it, it does show more and more of how serious all parts of the world are taking this topic. So,
Yeah.
Pavel, thank you for joining me as always here, my friend. Where can the people find you, by the way?
Thank you for having me. You can find me on Psicoactivo Podcast and on Twitter as Pavel Ibarrameda, just all together. I try to cover all sorts of stuff, not just the UAP issue, but mostly, yeah, I focus on this because this is what brings me passion, and I think it's important. So thank you for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here, and make sure you check out Pavel. And Pavel also shows up on the Down to Earth channel, which we run Monday through Friday. You guys can head on over there, subscribe over there. Also, if you want to get your daily UAP news. So, thanks for joining me here today. As I say each and every week, please consider getting yourself one of these sponsors here today, as it really helps the show out tremendously. I always put the links in the description. I put it as the first pinned comment. Thanks for joining us on UAP Tuesday. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. And then we'll see you back next Tuesday, man, or we'll see you at the UAP channel. Up to you guys. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Pavel. We'll see you later. Bye.